This conversation I'm having today with Dr. Nashlie Sephus is one that I've been looking forward to for a long time because she's so intellectual, so smart, and so accomplished, and also so down to earth. I wanted to make sure the timing was right, and the timing is right for this conversation. We're talking about AI with somebody who has a resume incredibly long and incredible depth with her skill set and her knowledge about this. So I'm going to read a little bit about Dr. Nashlie because I don't want to mess any of this up. So she's applied science manager at Amazon Artificial Intelligence. You don't get that job unless you the real deal. And she's focusing on fairness and identifying biases in AI technologies. Previously, she was on their visual search team at Amazon, which was technology that they acquired from another black-owned startup, PartPick. Shout out to Jewel Burke, where as Dr. Nashlie was doing the technology over there. So she's doing big stuff at Amazon now, and also doing really big stuff in the community in her hometown of Jackson, Mississippi. So, Dr. Nashlie Sephus. So we're having a lot of conversations about AI in our social discourse these days. But I feel like for our community, I'm interested in your response to this. Is there something missing from this conversation, particularly when we talk about Black people, underserved communities, communities that are not as sophisticated in technology as we would like them to be? Is there something we are missing about this AI conversation that needs to be in this conversation?
Yeah, so I think we often talk about the limitations and the fear of the technology. Um, we often talk about um, how we don't feel like the technology was created for us and people in our communities. And to some degree, I can definitely relate to that. But I do still stress the importance of not letting that be an excuse to not learn about the technology, and not letting that be an excuse for us to just dig in, get your hands dirty, and see what you can do to make it work for you. Because all the while, if we are continuously um, shying away from it, then we're just getting further and further behind. And I literally see it every day. I've been in the tech industry, um, in the corporate and the startup industry world since 2013 or so. I started down this path when I started undergrad at Mississippi State in 2003, and Georgia Tech. I started in 2008, and so I literally have seen it and lived it. All of my internships at all the companies you can imagine, all of the research projects over the past 20 years or so, we are still left out of the conversation. We're still left behind. We're still not taking advantage of the technology and how it can work for us in our everyday lives. So that's the message that I try to always tell people about when I'm speaking about it.
So when listening to you talk there, it gives me this idea that when even when I have conversations on this podcast, it's about there's a great fear with AI. We hear the news talks about this is going to take jobs, and I even go to restaurants now. You go to a drive-through and you can hear AI talking to you. These auto uh, order takers are taking orders now because it was for a long time it was hard to get people to fulfill those roles. So that is true to a certain extent. These are going to take jobs, and so when you have communities of people that you deal with every day, communities that we live in, who do see this happening, what is the offense we can play instead of just defense? And how do we play that offense strategically and just tactically? Like, what should we be doing?
Yeah, so it can be as simple as reading a blog on AI, letting that be a part of your regular routine, staying in the know about the news and what's new, what's to come. We recently saw that some companies have released text to video AI and generative AI. They have now released, instead of just inputting text into a chatbot, you can now input text and images to be able to create outputs. So they're becoming what we call multimodal. There are also new business segments that are coming out. I often talk about, because people have a concern about the technology and the data that is being trained on, we now need and will soon be mandated by policy and government to have special companies come in and test your technology and do what we call red teaming, intentionally try to break it and see what the issues are. All these are new business opportunities. And who better to come up with business opportunities to test for biases than those who are in the
Yeah.
minority? And so we have, even in my role at working as a principal AI scientist at Amazon, we have done contracts with several minority businesses to help get testing data to help test our algorithms for biases, and bias evaluation, and other areas of responsible AI. On the other hand, you look at the work that I've done in the community, for example, with BeanPath in Jackson, Mississippi, my hometown. We have been very intentional about going straight to the community. This is literally what you can start doing today. You can start using this for your business. Here are the tools. We even have workshops set up. You can come in for free. You could be a mom and pop business. You can be a startup company. You could be a mid-sized business, real estate company that's been in operation for
Yeah.
over 2-3 decades. We have something for you. We also have a senior citizen program where we teach senior citizens how to come in, get on the computer, not just check for their doctor's appointments and log in and get their lab results. They are now able to engage in social media. They're now able to engage in how to build a website for a group like a Sunday school class or something like that. We also impact the youth. We have summer camps. We have spring camps, fall camps. We have STEM Saturdays where they come in and engage in our maker space and able to use not just AI at a computer, but tangible things you can touch. Like use AI to plant a garden or use AI to design a t-shirt. And so we try to make it as engaging and as culturally relevant as possible to let people know that AI is for everyone and this technology is for you. You belong here. Even if you're not going to major in this field and get a computer science degree, which I want you to do, but I understand everybody's not going to do that. There's still a place for you.
I love that. And so I feel like, more and more as we have this AI conversation, when people say AI, it's like saying Africa. It's like people don't realize there's 100 countries inside Africa. And people just say, I'm going to Africa. And like, okay, where in Africa? It's like it's a whole continent. And so if you can talk about different AI use cases, different AI technologies, so that we can start to parse like what is happening in the world today. Because you got chatbots, you got AGI, people are really afraid of. But can you break down what these things are?
Right. So what we like to do when we're just describing this, we like to put it into two different categories. So there's what we call traditional AI, excuse me, traditional AI, which is what we normally would thought about AI before this last couple of years, where you're training models like a computer to act, think, talk, respond, etc., like a human based on previous data that it has learned from. So now we can make decisions about things in the future that we haven't seen before because of the things that we've learned from in the past in this what we call an AI model. So using it for predictions, using it for data analytics, using it for it could be predicting what I'm saying in speech in terms of natural language processing. It can be in terms of programming a robot to move arms a certain way according to the control system that for every action there's an opposite reaction. There's also we saw in terms of recognizing things in images, recognizing things in video. That's the traditional AI that we were talking about. Now, today, most recently, last couple of years, we've seen generative AI become really popular, and that basically means AI framework that allows you to generate keyword generative content based on some previous data. So we can be generating a conversation like in a chat bot. We can be generating images or videos based on some prompt that you've given it. And so this is the era of generative AI, which a lot of people use for things like marketing. If you're trying to create pictures for your website, if you're trying to get an understanding of something that you're trying to search for, it can respond in a way that's very similar to a human by putting together the different uh, words in a sentence that most likely, according to statistics, match the style that they think that you're looking for based on the prompt that you gave it. And so that's what we call generative AI. And again, the use cases are pretty much endless. Anything that you need content for, which is a lot of different things, like I said, marketing, website development, coming up with ideas on how to do pretty much anything, create a vacation planner or create a meal plan or even understand how can you go about, building a DIY project. Those are some of the use cases that we've seen for generative AI.
So what's so funny about this is, during it's not funny, I shouldn't say that. It's what's so interesting about this is like during COVID, there was this humongous like freelancer movement because people said, why am I going to this job when I can just go start my own thing? I can go start my own marketing company, my own photography business, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have these technologies that are coming out, and to your point, I can do my whole content calendar for social media by typing a few prompts in on Chat GPT. 4.0 just came out. 4 Omni just dropped in this by this recording yesterday. And so I think about, we kind of got boxed into this new world that we didn't even know, many of us didn't know we were going to. So we've taken this leap in entrepreneurship, and now you have this thing coming to eat your lunch. And so how how do people who have taken that leap of entrepreneurship make sure that they're, if not building, leveraging it?
Absolutely. So I often say this to my mentee. I have some mentees that, people that I mentor, and you know this Gen Z. I'm a millennial. This Gen Z generation, they're different, and even after them, the pandemic babies, they're different too. But I have to explain to them, you have to make yourself marketable. I understand you not if you don't want to go to college. I understand if you don't think it's worth it, monetary wise, especially if you don't have financial aid. There are ways to make money. There are ways. There are very successful people who didn't go to college, but you have to figure out how to make yourself competitive in today's world. The same is true for any large tech company. The largest, most successful tech companies are successful because they figured out how to constantly adapt.
Mm,
They figured out how to constantly move with the times and stay relevant and stay competitive. And that's what you, as an individual, have to do with your business too, regardless of what it is. And so, in terms of using AI, use it again. Find a way to use it to your advantage. Find ways that nobody else is using it, because we now have this interface on top of this. Like you say, this technology, people may not have seen it coming, but like for example, we were using generative AI in the actual AI industry, like years ago, and so now many people can use it because these companies have figured out, okay, let's make it easier for everybody to interface to this, which I think was a great idea because it helps level the playing field. The one thing technology does is it's code, right? It's computer programming code. Once it's released into the world, you can't really get it
yeah.
back. That could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing. But that's the one thing that you can't take away from us and people in our community. Once it's out there, it's out there. So now we have access to it. Now we have these interfaces. We can now use it to our advantage. And like I said, there are so many ways people are innovating every day with these new technologies and interfacing, figuring out how to use it for their business, whether it's on the internal operation side, like helping make you more efficient, or even on the external side, like generating content for other people that are a part of your freelance business. And so it really just takes some sitting down. Um, you have the tools. You just have to let your mind take you to that place of innovation, so that you can make a difference and you could be that competitive person in the market. I would definitely start by just educating yourself. There's no shortage of information out there, especially in today's information age. There are so many tutorials out there. A lot of them are free, and so if you're disciplined enough, you want to do that, then great. If you like to enroll in a program or course or an academy of some sort, I encourage you to do that too. But just don't stop learning, and remember, you have the tools now to innovate.
And what's is particularly the video on AI, generative AI. It's happening so fast, and so one of the critiques people have is how you can look at an image and tell, okay, that one, because the finger, maybe it's 8 fingers on one hand, like it's something, because there's crazy stuff. um
Yep.
but a year ago, it couldn't even produce half of what it's producing now, but it's happening so fast. And I'm not going to give the negative spin. I want you to give the positive side of this. It is, what excites you most about the future we're walking into, specific to how AI is going to impact our lives.
So I think it is really exciting for me to have a conversation like this with just about anybody, even my grandmother, in Jackson, Mississippi, because I tried for years to have this conversation with people, and nobody knew what I was talking about. Nobody, was like, "Oh yeah, well she's a smart girl, so that's not for me." So finally, we can sit at the table. We can talk about these things, at least, even if it's on a high level. It's at least something. And so, what we've been trying to tell people for the longest, now they're believing it, they're seeing it, and hopefully they're able to take advantage of it. I think for me in particular, I always say some of the most primitive areas and industries that I think AI can impact are healthcare and transportation. I love the applications that I'm seeing come down the line, especially in terms of look at the Black community, especially Black women's health, mental health, physical health, even amongst the Black male community. Like there's so much innovation we can do there. That's probably one of the most untapped areas that if you have the data, you can do a lot with AI and data science to be able to help people, feel better, help people, operate better in their everyday lives. And I mentioned also transportation. I'm still waiting on my flying car so I can fly over the traffic in Atlanta, and so I just hope that someday, real soon, I can do that.
So how do we get more Nashleys in places like, Jackson, Mississippi? Because I think about what you're doing, and there's others. There's people who, and I won't mention names right now, but there's other people I know who have gone back home, back to their original hometowns, and have recognized that it's not just about being in Silicon Valley. It's not just about being in Miami, but they're back. The people back home need what the future that they're being exposed to, and so how do we get more people to recognize this opportunity? Like, what did you see, or what pulled you back home and said, you know what, I'm doing big in Atlanta and wherever else I'm at, but there's still work for me to do here in Jackson?
Yeah. Well, first of all my family's still in Jackson. Majority of all my family in Jackson, the Mississippi area. So, never will forget home. Never will forget my people, my friends, my family, and then also it has so much potential. I remember coming back home after being in Silicon Valley and New York City and Atlanta, overseas, even as close as Memphis and New Orleans, and you're seeing so much progression happen all around you. But in my hometown of Jackson, Mississippi, I would see, just I didn't see the same rate of change that I was seeing in other areas, and so I wanted to be a part of that and at least contribute in terms of STEM education, exposure, and tech, because that was something I had been successful in, and so I knew that I could contribute in that. Started the nonprofit Bean Path and working on the real estate development to do a lot more there in Jackson. And so I knew that why not Jackson, because it had definitely has the most potential probably out of any city I've seen. Is and I think if we can do it there, we can do it anywhere.
So a big conversation that people who are concerned about AI have is where it's getting its data from. And you mentioned this earlier, like, it learns from historical, facts, historical data sets, etc. And so I was listening to an episode of some podcast 2 weeks ago, maybe, and it was talking about how, particularly like OpenAI and others have downloaded like entire Hollywood movie, libraries, and entire music catalogs by record labels, and entire, libraries from, Random House and et cetera, to feed the model. Some of that illegally, because those are copywritten, materials. And so there are deep ethical concerns is the point here. And so what concerns you when you think about how we're building this so that you can work in your own way to ensure that we're doing this in a way that's still fair to people and creators even?
Yeah, it we I mean I can't say it enough, but so in the tech industry there's 3%, there's a stat that says 3% of the tech industry are black females. Um, and that number has been the same for, I think they said, last 20 or 30 years. So that is a problem. And I said black women, but the stats are similar for black men, and look at any other BIPOC group. I think that until we have diversity on the tech development teams, we will continue to see a lot of these issues, because that's where a lot of this gets flagged at. Um, Upper level management. I think we're seeing a lot more black um, and BIPOC CEOs of tech companies, which is great. I'm hoping that they can help steer, more inclusion in these emerging technologies. But the person who's actually doing the coding, the person who's actually training the model, the person who's actually gathering the data and making sure that the data is good enough to go into the model, that's where we need that extra set of eyes to make sure that we're seeing the level of inclusion that we want to see. And also thinking of the right bias testing that we should be adequately thinking about. Also, uh, a lot of the data, I mean, in this country, we have no policies in place. I mean, they're a lot closer than what we used to be just 3 years ago, 2019. But we're very inching along in terms of, what is considered in compliance, what is not in compliance. How do we hold companies accountable? How do we even put some standards in place? And it's very difficult. So it's not a trivial thing, even if everyone's hearts and minds were in the right place. So it is something that we're constantly going to have to work at, and it's a what we call a shared responsibility model. Everybody has to play a part in this, but ultimately, I would say again, it boils down to getting more tech diversity in the tech development roles.
What skills are going to be most valuable in a market that's driven by largely AI models? Like, what skills, when you talked about those kids who were like questioning going to college, you know, what skills should they be learning to ensure that they can still find a place in the market?
They should definitely be very hands on and at least somewhat tech savvy when it comes to these emerging technologies. I Again, it's so much information out there. It's really no excuse to not learn. I mean, even look at social media. We've been exposed. Look at how fast something can go viral. Look at how fast a trend can catch on across the entire world, or a dance on TikTok can take off. Um, that in that same vein, these technical courses on how to learn how to use generative AI for marketing, how to learn how to use basic programming skills to help you solve problems, and using different products on the market, that learning how to evaluate products, even like all of these skill sets are necessary. And unfortunately, a lot of our youth are not engaging with these things at as they should be in order to be prepared. I do wholeheartedly believe that people can be prepared for this next wave. And just think about it, this is only the beginning. Like we barely scratched the surface of, because the technology is just now getting into the hands of people. It's just now getting into the hands of the black community. So we barely scratched the surface. There's so much potential here, and so I just hope that they take the bull by the horns and just run with it.
There's this quote on your X, I won't say Twitter, but your X account, where it's like just maybe a couple weeks ago, where you said, "Tech is not black or white; it's green, as in money. That's why we can't risk losing DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion in tech, furthering the financial power gaps in communities." Financial and power gaps in the communities. From entrepreneurship to big tech, find a way to make tech work for you, your company, or your community. So with that, what you said there, as you and I know, there's only so few nationally Dr. Cephas, walking around, and I'm sure you walk into a lot of rooms where nobody looks like you or is your gender, and especially in the work that you do. And so, to that last point, you said find a way to make it work for you, your company or your community. What was the way you found to make this work for you, where you added value?
I saw the need to, there's a saying, the biblical saying, teach a man how to give him a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for a lifetime. So I wanted to help people feed themselves for a lifetime. So I started the nonprofit Bean Path in my hometown of Jackson, Mississippi, which has no shortage of challenges. All you gotta do is watch the news or Google Jackson, Mississippi to see all the challenges. And but I knew that uh, if you can teach these people here, they will go on and teach other people, and they will teach other people because that's the cycle. And someone even showed me. I remember my eighth grade teacher sent me to my first engineering camp when I first realized what engineering actually was. And if she had not done that, I would have majored in music. I probably still would have been fine. But I think I love music too. But that was a game changer. So if I can change the game for somebody else, hopefully they keep giving that cycle back, and then the whole community benefits from that. I think that's what did it for me. uh, I mean, everything else is just kind of, I love my role and as being a principal scientist and being able to interact with cutting edge technology every day. I work with some brilliant people, from Amazon to startups that I advise, to other, techies. But the real passion comes from teaching people how to fish when it comes to technology.
So I kind of positioned this question a little bit ago, but you just brought it back up with the teachers that what you would have been in music and etc. There had to be a conversation or a moment or etc. where somebody pointed out this math and computer science area to you, and you're like, it finally registered, like this is the path for me. Or I don't know what your story is, but there's had to be a moment where it just, you could have went left and you went right. What was that? Can you tell more about that conversation that actually made the switch flip? Because what we struggle in enough already is just having math principles in our community to be able to take these paths. So can you talk about what got your interest to the level where you like, I'm in, that's for me?
Yeah, I knew that. I mean, the way this particular, so I done math and science classes. I was excelling in math and science as a kid. That was just kind of my thing. I wasn't really big on history and all these other subjects, but that math and science, that was my thing. And so I remember that camp after eighth grade. They just showed us, hey, you type these letters and numbers in a computer, you can control things around you. And I was just like, "Oh, what? Hold on, let me try this." And it was so fascinating to me. And I was like, "Wow, one day I'm gonna be able to control the whole world."
Wow.
And that's really what
Wow.
that's really what.
Yeah, yeah, I love that.
And so, and little did I know, because this was, I mean, I graduated high school in like in let's see, '03, and so back then, like computers didn't control everything like it does now. Like, we went through the Y2K together and all that, and so we didn't know it was gonna be, all of this, and so I didn't even know that. And then let alone how I ended up getting into AI and knowing how that would take. I never knew. I just was interested in it. And I think for people, we just got to find a way to show people in our community the possibilities that's out there and how it relates to them according to what they're interested in. Um, I got into AI because I was interested in the Shazam app.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought that was so cool because I was a musician. I was like, well, I want to hear this song. I was like, how is this thing working? This is so cool. And that was the same techniques in AI and music. At the time, it wasn't even called AI. It was machine learning or pattern recognition or digital signal processing. All of that, those are the same techniques we're using today in AI and natural language processing and generative AI. And so, you never know where things will take you. Just start with what you're interested in. So we present it in a way that, shows people. Hey, you now some people on the street they've been doing math for a long
Yeah,
time. They're involved in some illegal
yeah.
activities, but they know math. We just gotta make it relate to the things that they're used to, the things that excite them.
You started Bean Path, your nonprofit to help along this route, and there's a lot of nonprofit people, executive directors and community organization folk who will listen to this episode to hear you. And what role do you see those community organizations and nonprofits playing in making sure that we are educated and aware of what's happening?
Yeah, the organizations and the community they play a huge part in the ecosystem, what I call the tech ecosystem, um, because I think tech is really at the center of it all, and people. And so, whereas you have the colleges and universities, they're going to educate the people who are going to college. You have government, they're going to take care of their constituents. You have the large corporations, you have the startup companies. But what about everybody else, which is the majority of people? Those who are not in school, those who don't have a startup company or work in tech, and those who are not in government. That's the majority of people. If we touch those people, then we connect the gap in the ecosystem. And that's what Bean Path focuses on. And that's what a lot of other nonprofits that are similar, they try to focus on that gap in the community and make sure that those people are not forgotten.
Dr. Cephas, thank you so much for joining me. This was good. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.